I would like to take you on a tour of this island. And to do that, we're going to start at this island. It's fun to say, Joan of Arc Island. It's on Riverside Drive up in the 90s. And it's called that because of this sculpture of Joan of Arc, which, when it was erected in 1915, was the first public sculpture of a real-life woman in the history of New York City. And before this, of course, give it up for Joan of Arc, or Catholics, or you're French, or just public works of women. Think about it, this is less than 100 years ago. The first one they choose has been dead for 400 years. That's how they roll, right? Now, but what's compelling to me about it is that before this, and at the same time, clearly many, many sculptures and statues of women were made, and they weren't of not real-life women. They were sort of in between. They were allegorical sculptures, and I'm interested in those. They were justice, liberty, stuff like that. Stuff like this next sculpture, just a couple blocks up. This is the Firemen's Memorial. This is an allegory of motherhood. And what's interesting about this, to me, is that we know who the model is in this case. That is Audrey Munson. So in 1906, Audrey Munson's walking down the street in New York City with their mom. Mom's recently divorced. Audrey's 15 years old. They've recently come from upstate New York to try to make it in a big city, and they're followed by a photographer. The photographer wants to take Audrey's picture, and Mom's creeped out. Right? She deals with him pretty much like we deal with that situation now, but this guy's the real deal. He takes photos of Audrey, and he gives them to his artist friends. And his friends decide that she's the perfect model for some of these Beaux-Arts commissions that they're getting in the, turn of the century New York. She quickly becomes a very, very popular model choice for these American and European sculptors. So much so that you really can't drive a mile without running into an Audrey Munson. So in this case, we can just go up a couple blocks and over just a couple. This is Broadway and 107th. This is a beautiful sculpture, this time in bronze. And this is Audrey Munson as mourning. And she's mourning these Strausses, Isidore and Ida. They were owners of Macy's, which was the good news for them. The bad news was that that meant they could afford 2 first-class tickets on the Titanic. If you go, I'll just skip the part that my brother did so well, take you to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where you can kind of see the breadth of Audrey Munson's work. This is the first sculpture of her. This is when she's 16 years old. It's titled Night Descending. This is currently, not only is this in storage, this is in storage in New Jersey, which is kind of a double indignity, but hopefully they will get it out so you can see it. It's fantastic to look at. It's the first one done of her. These next two have absolute pride of place over there, so you can't miss them in the American Sculpture Wing of the Met, both by Daniel Chester French. He was the guy who sculpted the Lincoln Memorial. In this case, that's Audrey as mourning Victory. Victory is usually shown with big triumphant wings. Here, they're just tiny little feathers tucked beneath her cloak. She's mourning the Civil War dead. And this was French's favorite sculpture he ever did. This is Audrey Munson toward the end of her career as Memory. So not only is she working with the top guys, she has become a byword for feminine physical perfection. You can hear people saying, that's the perfect body, Audrey Munson. She was a sculptor's supermodel when there wasn't even such a thing. She sort of invented the position. And again, you can just keep moving down the street. Go down the street a couple blocks to the Frick. It has 2 entrances. Audrey is over the north entrance. There's Audrey again over the south entrance. And just keep moving down the street. You may have seen this as you came out of the Genius Bar at the Mac store. This is the Pulitzer Fountain. Audrey Munson as Pomona. And it's already cool, right, to have a sculpture of yourself on a corner of Central Park. Audrey Munson did it twice. She is at the top of the Remember the Maine monument. She's also one of the figures down at the bottom. Take a look at this guy right here. Can you see? He's at the prow of a boat. It looks like he's going, yes! He's actually breaking an iron sword that was vandalized about a century ago. So it is New York. In the 19-teens, Audrey heads west. She decides to capitalize on her fame, nationwide fame, to get a new Hollywood career, right when Hollywood is first starting. Audrey is the first woman to take all her clothes off in a motion picture. She did it in 1915. She played an artist muse. What I like about that is you keep going down the street here. We'll go down Broadway to 42nd. At the New Amsterdam Theater, there's a kind of a rare painting of Audrey in the proscenium there. She's the nude right over the stage. So if you go there tomorrow, you can catch a very buttoned up Mary Poppins at the same time you see a completely unbuttoned Audrey Munson. Audrey's career in movies didn't turn out exactly like she expected. She did return home to New York and she started living in a boarding house owned by a doctor who became so obsessed with her that he murdered his wife to be with her. She had nothing to do with this. She was in fact quite turned off. He was sentenced to die in the electric chair and he hanged himself in prison before such a thing could happen. A lot of stress on Audrey. Combine that with her body aging and styles changing from this monumental Beaux-Art look to a trimmer Art Deco kind of thing. And a lot of sensationalism around her. And there's still a lot of speculation around her. We can head down 42nd Street to the Central Library, the one with the lions. This is an allegorical sculpture of beauty. There's a little bit of debate whether or not this is even Audrey Munson. The library itself is kind of coy on the matter. A lot of speculation about what is or not. A lot of wishful thinking. Even Columbia, for example, has a famous sculpture of Alma Mater in front. People say that it looks like Audrey. It does kind of look like Audrey, a nice patrician profile. But it was done when she was 9, so not Audrey. But there are plenty of sculptures, very well attested as absolutely something that she posed for. A slew of them downtown. The Manhattan Bridge, as you head into Brooklyn, you will see Audrey Munson as the spirit of commerce. Right at the end of the island, also by Daniel Chester French, this is the Customs House. This is Audrey Munson as nothing less than the entire continent of North America. At the age of 39, Audrey and her mom had returned to upstate New York. They lived in a tiny town called Mexico. Audrey became kind of erratic in her behavior. She was depressed. She attempted suicide. She was committed to an insane asylum where she lived for the next 65 years. And she died there 2 months into Bill Clinton's second term at the age of 104 years old. She outlived all her family. I've been to her gravesite in a tinier town than Mexico called New Haven, New York. She is buried in her father and stepmother's plot. The most sculpted woman easily in New York has no name on a tombstone and absolutely no marker. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is we can go to a tall building. We could go to the roof of the Ace Hotel right now. We could look to the south. We would see Manhattan's most important building, civic anyway. This is the municipal building downtown, and it is spotlit up at the top. This is a fantastic 23-foot tall allegorical gilded sculpture, the tallest allegorical sculpture in Manhattan, if you don't count the Statue of Liberty, which I think is offshore. This is Audrey Munson as civic fame. She's holding a crown with 5 peaks on it to represent the 5 boroughs of New York City. It's an absolutely extraordinary story, but just one of millions and millions in an absolutely extraordinary city where we find ourselves tonight. Thank you very much for joining all of us at TEDxEastSalon.